Today, I'm going to talk to you on setting boundaries at work without feeling guilty. Now, boundaries is a topic that I talk about a lot with my clients, or I don't necessarily talk to them about it a lot, but it comes up a lot in our coaching conversations. And I thought it might be useful if we could explore this topic a little bit today. So I've got a few notes here on my screen that I'm going to try and keep to so I don't kind of ramble off in different ways. An example of keeping to my own boundaries. Why might we be talking about boundaries? Why might this be an important topic? And I think often as finance professionals, we're trying to be available to our stakeholders, whether these are people within finance, maybe our boss, maybe people outside of finance as well. We could have external clients depending on what kind of role we're in. And actually being able to work to the needs of different people and also different types of deadlines as well can often be a challenge. And what often happens, certainly earlier on in our career, is that we just keep working harder, keep working longer hours. And actually, that might help in the short term to kind of get through a particularly busy time, but that's not going to necessarily help us in the longer term. And that's what I want to try and talk about here today. So, we're going to talk a little bit about understanding boundaries. We're going to talk a little bit about the guilt of saying no, and then we're going to focus on some practical tips for setting boundaries without feeling guilty. So, let's talk about understanding boundaries first of all. There are different types of boundaries. So, often we think about our time. As in, how many hours do I work? Do I work beyond 6 in the evening, or do I start before a certain time? That can be often something that we can be referring to when we're talking about boundaries. And sometimes this comes up because maybe we're ending up consistently working long hours late into the evening, etc. There could be some boundaries around the task or the remit that we have. And I don't know about you, but often when I have gone into a job, I've given a job description, and then little by little, or even quite soon, we end up doing tasks that maybe weren't on our to-do list. So being able to look at what's in our remit, and sometimes these things can be useful for us to take on because they can help with our development or whatever. But sometimes we might be taking on things that are way beyond our remit, that we are not recognized for, that we're not compensated for, and that really aren't serving us at all. So we've got the time boundaries, we've got the task boundaries, and we might also have some emotional boundaries as well. And there are certain things that maybe we're asked to do, or certain situations that we find ourselves in that we think, actually, that's not all right that I've been asked to do this, or that's not all right that I've been put in this situation. So there's these different types of boundaries. And I think the first thing is recognizing what kind of boundaries are we talking about. And it might be that in your case, you're talking about all three of these, or it might be the task ones, the time ones, or those emotional boundaries. But I think being clear on all of these types of boundaries can help us to really focus on where we do want to channel our time and energy and where we don't. So the second thing is around the guilt of saying no. And this can be a challenge for many people. I think we're conditioned really to say yes to every request. So if an opportunity comes up, or we've been asked to prepare some slides or a report for a particular meeting, or given the chance to be on a project, we're asked to say, we've been conditioned to say yes to things rather than actually thinking about whether that's the right thing for us. And where does this guilt come from, or where does this feeling come from? Well, sometimes it comes from our desire to please others. So, yeah, I know my boss is busy, or I know my team are busy, and I'm going to pick this up. Sometimes we might be worried about negative consequences. Well, this has been framed as a really important opportunity for me, or something where I can really learn or step up to the next level. And actually, if I say no to that, maybe that will look bad. Maybe I won't get these kind of opportunities as well. And maybe that will have a direct impact on whether I progress or not. Some of these feelings often come from that feeling of being indispensable. I'm the center of everything. Things can't operate without me. And yet, actually, that's probably not a useful place for anybody to be feeling indispensable. So the next part then is about practical steps, and I am very much about practical steps. What can you actually take away that you can put into place, that you can try and try out? Yeah, and sometimes things work for one person and they won't work so well for another person, or sometimes you've got a super opportunity and this will work exactly for you right now, or sometimes we have to put these things in our back pocket until the opportunity comes along. But I'm going to share with you 5 different tips or techniques that you could try for setting boundaries without feeling guilty. So the first one is being clear and direct. And sometimes it's as simple as saying, I can't proactively, I can't take on any additional this week, but I can help you after Thursday, for example. So it's being clear about what's going on for us right now. And that could be, I can't take anything on this month. I'll be in a position to consider your request later on. So it's a way of pushing back, but not in a way of saying no, absolutely. It's until I have the bandwidth to be able to do this. So that's the first one, is being clear and direct. The second one then is prioritizing. And this is about the importance of prioritizing tasks. Now, as finance pros, we know that we don't just have one or two things on our to-do list at any point in time. Often we're involved in lots of different things, multiple deadlines, critical projects, and actually not everything is an emergency to be done right here and right now. So using something like the urgency versus importance frameworks to help to decide what's important versus not important and what's urgent versus not, and being able to spend our time on the right things and not some of those things that are less urgent or less important to us right now. The third one then is about using time blocks. And I love blocking out time in my diary. So I have a lot of links that people can use to book time in my diary. And this is great because it helps people see when my diary is empty and when I'm available. And it helps people to clearly and easily be able to book time at times that they want. The downside of this is that sometimes people just fill up my diary here, there, and everywhere, and I can't put any breaks in and things like that. And most importantly, I can't then do any work. And I know that there are some of you that have diaries that are back to back. And actually, when are you going to do some of the preparation for meetings, or when are you going to do some of the action points coming over those? So actually helping to block out your diary, looking at it in advance, a week in advance, a month in advance, and being able to put in some time blocks to actually do some work or some buffer in between the meeting in case they go on, or just so that you can actually take a break, can be useful. So that is the third point, using time blocks. The fourth one is practice saying no. We are not used to saying no often. It can be really uncomfortable, partly finding the words or partly actually saying the words. So I think practicing some things ahead of time, I'm not able to take that on right now, but I'm happy to discuss at a later time. Or I'm focusing on X at the moment. Can we revisit this later in the week to see if I've got time available? So being able to start by saying some of these things out loud, and we can start with people that maybe we feel more comfortable with. And this is not necessarily pushing back, but it is establishing our boundaries. The other thing that we can do is start with easier tasks. And that might sound like, well, you're still saying no, you're still pushing back, but maybe these tasks are less consequential. So starting with easier things, building up the habit and practice of saying no, and then pushing that back or extending that until we get to bigger tasks as well. And then the final one, then reframing the mindset. So often with boundaries, we're coming from a position where we feel selfish that we're putting a boundary up. And I try and get people to visualize putting up, it's like having a fence or some kind of hedge or something around our house. We are protecting ourselves. But actually, this isn't something that is a bad thing. We don't want people just wandering in off the street and trespassing or whatever. We don't want people taking some of our time that we haven't given them permission to. So to be able for us to sustain good performance, it's about protecting our time and energy. And actually, if we are then picking and choosing the highest priorities of things to work on, then this is going to be good for us and going to be good for others as well. So just to recap then, boundaries are definitely essential. It's normal to sometimes feel some discomfort or some guilt around this, but this is definitely manageable, and you have some practical strategies to start with. So just to recap on those five strategies. So one, be clear and direct. Two, prioritize. Three, using time blocks. Four, practice saying no. And five, reframing the mindset. And by taking some of these small steps, establishing some habits, learning some new skills, you will be get better and better at putting those boundaries into place. And I promise that your work will be more focused, and hopefully you will feel more in control of your time and your energy as well.